Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Our special guest is Butterfly McQueen. Butterfly McQueen lives in New York City, but travels around the country. For many reasons, she has her own one-woman show, and one of the other important reasons she's traveled is whenever Gone with the Wind has a big gala, then she tries to be there and share some facts about that wonderful movie. It's good to have you in Macon, Georgia's pre-taped interview. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Dell. It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, Macon is the home of the late Susan Myrick, and I couldn't say no to anyone who asked me here.
Susan Myrick was the technical advisor from Gone with the Wind.
Dialogue, and she helped us with our talking.
All right, did she have to help you very much?
I don't think so, but she thinks so. She thought so. When I was a child, my neighbors were from Nassau in the Bahamas, in Tampa, Florida, where I was born, and my mother would leave me with them when she went to work. And that's why one hears a little British accent. But I was raised in Augusta, Georgia, where my mother was born and raised, and where I now have a little house. I was never allowed to whine and say very sing-songy way, the way I have an aunt. I did have an aunt, Rachel, in Tampa, that talked that southerly like. I was never allowed to talk that way, though my mother would sometimes say, "You is and I is," which is old Shakespeare if one is a student. So I've never had an opportunity to be very southern in my talk. That's why I like my show with Dunbar. I opened my one-woman show with Paul Laurence Dunbar.
What do you do in your one-woman show?
Open it with Dunbar. Next is Kipling's If. Next is Shakespeare's the speech that Titania says to Oberon. And then I go on to songs, mostly choruses, of about 38 songs, and movements, a surprise period, and mostly they like to talk the way we're talking now, the audience.
They want to ask you questions, as I do, and I'm sure that many of the questions center around Gone with the Wind and Prissy. How did you get the role of Prissy?
Mr. George Abbott gave me a part on the Broadway stage. Newspaper people came and gave me good notices. There was a man from Atlanta, Mr. Ward Morehouse, came and wrote, he said, "Here is a winsome girl of chocolate hue," and other writers gave me wonderful notices. Then the business people tied me up, because 2 years before I had begged for the role of Prissy, and they asked me my age, and I told them the truth. They said, "Oh, you're too old, you're too fat, you're too dignified." But once you're on the stage, and writers, in those days it was writers that gave one a promotion, and then the business people, because it is a business. Then they tied me up and sent me to Hollywood. Came at matinee time in Philadelphia, put a contract on my dressing room table and said, "If you want to go to Hollywood, sign."
And you signed?
Of course.
And you went to Hollywood?
I had to.
And you had the opportunity to become Prissy, and you said many lines in the movie. There are lines that conjure up in our minds, and we think of Scarlett when she said, "War, war, war, war makes me nervous, all this war, talk about war."
Yes.
And then, of course, Rhett's famous line.
Yes.
You had perhaps the most famous line in the entire movie.
I
People
suppose it was a chance
all the time.
It was a chance for people to relax and laugh when I said, "Oh, Miss Scarlett, I don't know nothing about birthing babies." It was a chance to relax.
At the time you said that, did you feel like, did you know how the movie had been shot and what sequence, and how this one line was going to give, as you say, relief to everyone watching it?
I don't think any of us knew that the movie in its entirety would be so popular. We were just people who did well, whatever we had to do. And
let's speak of some of the people. I'd like to just call some names out and ask you to give your opinion of what they were like personally and what they were like to work with. Let's start with, well, why not Rhett Butler, Clark Gable?
Oh, a perfect gentleman, and always concerned about one, and not any vulgarity. The full year I was there, I didn't hear one darn. one day his script was late, and I heard the man say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gable, but your script isn't ready." And oh, he was so angry. I was by his side. He had the dummy baby in his arms, and he looked around. He saw me, and he didn't say anything vulgar, but you could see his jaw was grinding. He wanted to say something, and had I not been there, he would have said something. Now, I've often wanted to send everybody a picture of Clark Gable to show them that he was a gentleman, a man concerned, because I was always whining and complaining, and one day he said, "What's the matter, Prissy?" As if to say, if they're not nice to you, you let me know. But I just didn't like the role then.
What was Prissy's opinion of Scarlett O'Hara? We'll find out when we get back. Home is New York City now, but she travels around with her one-woman show, Butterfly McQueen, an accomplished actress. We're talking with her and reminiscing about Gone with the Wind. We asked her about Rhett Butler, and now we want to know about Scarlett O'Hara.
Vivian Leigh had the longest role, I think, and the hardest job of all. And as everyone on the set were all ladies and gentlemen. It was such a wonderful group of people. She was not ill on the set. I was sad to read. It was sad to read about her, but nothing like that showed then. She must have overworked her body, and one hears about these people after they leave their jobs. Yeah. It is very hectic in a way, and if you're not around nice people, it can take its toll. But Miss Leigh was a lady on the set.
Butterfly, what did you think of working with Olivia de Havilland?
Oh, she was great fun. When we had the scene, the birthing of the baby, when the camera wasn't on us, she kept us in stitches, telling us funny stories. And she's great fun.
What about Ashley? What was he like?
One day I was just on the set, and Mr. Ashley Wilkes passed by smoking a pipe, and he looked and never said anything because I never had any scenes with him.
How about Gerald O'Hara?
I never even saw him because I had no scenes with Mr. O'Hara.
How many working days did you have in actually doing your
Not
show?
many. They just enlarged it, and Mr. Selznick kept me on longest, I think, on the payroll because he appreciated how I was trying to do the best I could, though I hated that role.
Why?
I didn't want to be so stupid and backward. It was 1938. And I didn't think that anybody was going to go back and be so authentic. I'm glad now, though.
Sure. But at the time, did you think this might hinder you getting other jobs and other work or typecast you in a certain way?
No, ma'am, it wasn't that. It was the fact that we are a very progressive people. The English once said that the black people have advanced further than any people held in bondage. An English writer said that about us. I don't know if that is true now since the so-called integration, but we came forward after that slavery period, and I didn't think anybody was going to go back and bring up the past that way. I thought it would be the second imitation of life with Lana Turner. And, but now I see that he was right. Mm-hmm. It was a true way that people lived. My mother was too tender-hearted. She never talked about slavery. And I didn't know, in those days, one didn't read about the past. But I have studied now, and I know that history can't be helped by one or two people. That was the way things were.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to have you in Macon. I would just really be remiss if I didn't ask you, if you would please, to say it one more time. Wait a minute. One more time. Butterfly McQueen, as we remember her as Prissy.
Miss Scarlett, I don't know nothing about birthing babies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll be back, but now this. It's been a great day for us to reminisce and to actually meet in person one of the superstars of our time, Prissy, Butterfly McQueen from Gone with the Wind. We've invited her to come to Macon just any time. We'd like to share her one-woman show with you. Thank you again for joining us today. Trody Troy.